It can be super overwhelming, especially if you aren't very familiar with the steps it takes in order to start a business. Having a business isn't for everyone. A lot of people find that once they take a hobby into a business, it doesn't bring them that certain joy that they used to get from it. So I am not doing this video to convince you to start a business. This is just for you if you have been wanting to start it and you're just a little bit lost knowing where to start. If you're wondering why you should listen to me, I do have some experience. I have been running a business with my husband for the past 15 years. When I went to college, I graduated with a degree in business management. Now, this doesn't make me an expert on everything by any means. It's what's been true for my life so far. And common sense disclaimer, I am not an attorney. I am not an accountant. And even if I was, I'm not your attorney or accountant. So you definitely want to speak with a professional in your area because things are going to be different based on how you structure your business, what state you live in, what country you live in. They're all completely different. So again, this is just a starting point. I recently put out a video on a bunch of different ideas to turn crochet into a business. So if you haven't watched that and you're really not even sure what business you want to start, I would start there and I'll have that video linked. So if you've already kind of narrowed down what you want to do for your business, the first thing you're going to want to do is to look into how you want to structure that business. And this will be based on different factors. Where you want this business to grow, meaning like how big or how small do you plan on it being? Is this something where in the future you see it as having employees? Is this going to be, more of a passion project for you? That's going to be important how you legally structure it. Business structures are going to be sole proprietorship, LLC, which is a limited liability company, and of course there's corporations. But based on the size and the type of business, I'm assuming you're going to keep it kind of small. Now, I live in the United States, and where I live, you do have to file paperwork with the state I live in, which is Iowa, registering your business. So you'll need a business name, you'll need a business entity, and what it's going to be. So if you have access to an accountant who can look at your other finances and kind of see based on, like this is probably going to start out a side hustle for you and maybe grow into something else. So you'll want to take into consideration how you're being taxed at your job or how your significant other is. That's something that really would be beneficial for you to talk to a qualified tax accountant about. And if you have access to an attorney, it's always a good idea to speak with them and see if they can guide you a little bit as far as what they think the best option would be for you. If you don't have access to either one of those, obviously do your research for where you live. I do know a lot of people use a service like LegalZoom. I have never used this personally, but I have seen other people recommend it. They have a lot of simple legal documents that you can use. You put your information in and there is a fee, but I believe it is even also registered with your state for you. So look into that if you do not have access to an attorney. So let's cover a couple other quick basics right here. You are going to want to have a separate account for this business. That is how business works. You don't commingle it in with your personal finances. It is going to save you if for some reason you were ever audited, and it will also give that business more legitimacy, and we're far less likely to embezzle from yourself if that money is separate and not in your main account. There are a couple other main points based on the type of business that you're going to have. Are you running a business that requires inventory? So this would be along the lines of being a finished piece seller of some sort. And you can keep track of inventory in a couple different ways. Now, the one big thing I want to say is having a business does not give you carte blanche to go out and buy whatever yarn you want. Unfortunately, that is not how it works. Again, this is where an accountant can be very helpful to you in deciding what is best. But I just wanted to make that note because I think a lot of us, it could be extremely tempting to head to the closest yarn store under the assumption that we are now business owners who need an inventory and just go hog wild. And unfortunately, that just isn't the way it is. But when we're dealing with business expenses, what you're going to find is that you need to be pretty darn meticulous in your record keeping. There's a lot of things that actually are expenses. And I want to tell you about someone who was speaking to me in my office, and she was speaking about a totally different type of business that she wanted to get off the ground. So while she was talking about the products she needed to buy to do these services and those type of expenses, I had mentioned to her just about, being able to record those for tax purposes and that those were deductions. And she said, I'm really just trying to get this going and get this off the ground. And so I'm not going to register anything, and I'm not going to be doing that. I just want to tell you that, nobody really likes paying taxes. And, that's not a fun part of owning a business at all. It's very necessary to be an actual business. And I think that both legally and mentally and emotionally, to know you are doing business legitimately, it does a lot for yourself and your self-esteem and your self-worth, knowing you're doing things correctly. Help build that confidence. Yeah, I am a business owner. I'm not even counting the legal problems that can be as far as, taking money and all of that stuff. But I just don't think that this particular person will ever really succeed at that business because she isn't taking it seriously. The reality is, when you start a business, your profits are probably not going to be super high, especially in the beginning, and you are going to have a lot of expenses. And I know that makes it feel like you're not succeeding or you're not successful, but that's the reality of starting a business. We don't start with 100 customers. If we start out and we're not a real business and we're kind of doing little things here on the side and taking a little cash and whatever, you're training those customers to not take you seriously and to want to keep things kind of under the table. And it's going to be hard in the future to turn them into actual legitimate customers. I just think that's making things way more difficult on yourself. Now, there are going to be a lot of expenses when you first start. Like I said, registering your as a business as an expense right there. Number one expense. If you go and set up a bank account and you purchase checks, anything like that, that's also an expenses. So you're going to want to need to start out with a certain amount of money. That's the reality of doing business. When we opened our business 15 years ago, it's not an online business, it's a brick and mortar business. We had to have capital to start out with. We had to have our own capital that we had saved, and then we also had to borrow money from a bank and give them a business plan. And while a lot of these crochet businesses are much, much smaller and you really probably won't need a loan at all for, it's still the same premise. You are going to need capital to start if you want to start things out right and you don't want to be just bootstrapping for everything. So it would be a good time to tally up what some of those starting expenses are going to be for the business you're choosing to start. It might only be a few $100s, but it's still something you kind of need to tally up and figure out what it's going to be so that you can kick in that money. As we're approaching tax season and this type of stuff is on people's mind, assuming it's within your budget, and if you have a spouse or partner that this is something they're on board with, maybe take some of that tax return that you might be getting and put that and invest that into this crochet business. Just an idea of, where you can get some extra capital. But again, that's going to be different for every person's situation. A few of the expenses that you're going to have off the bat are obviously inventory for whatever it is you're making if you're making a product. If you are selling on an online marketplace, there are going to be fees attached to that. I am not a finished piece seller and I do not know what Etsy's fees are, but that's something you do want to look into so you are prepared for that and you know kind of what that's going to be. If you are selling anywhere else or if you are making your own website, anything like that, you're going to need to know those fees, and those are legitimate tax deductions, whether it's an annual fee for like web hosting. I pay, I think it's $12 a year for my domain name, shannontalksyarn.com, and I pay, I believe, $6 a month into Google Workspace in order to be able to have my Shannon at Shannon Talks Yarn email address and be able to go in and use those features. So those are all things I plan for, and they're not big expenses. I use Canva all the time. Canva to me is a very necessary business expense, and if you're doing anything online, in my opinion, could very much benefit from Canva because it's very user-friendly, very easy to use, and so great for digital marketing. There's going to be a lot of other things where there's some structured expenses and some gray area expenses. So again, something that you really need to talk to someone qualified, but also take really good records. Let's take, for example, if you're a finished piece seller and you are participating in markets. Your market fees are going to be a tax deduction. All or part of your gas mileage to get there can be, and again, this is going to vary on where you're at, that's an expense. A portion or all of the food you eat while you're at the market. So you're going to want to detail those expenses as much as possible so that at the end of the year, when you're talking to a tax professional, they're going to know what percentage is legal in your state and how much you can deduct. So, if you are writing, you had a meal while you were in this town for this market, they're going to be able to go through and decipher what can be deducted. Same goes for a hotel. If you are far enough away that you're staying in a hotel, it's where proper record keeping is really going to be your best friend. If you are being very, very vague and writing, travel, supplies, that is something where an accountant is not going to be as likely to give you as much help because they aren't knowing what those expenses are and how legitimate they really are. The first year that you're in business and you do have so many expenses because you're just starting out and there's generally stuff you need to buy to get started, first year generally isn't as profitable. The good news is you're probably going to get to keep a larger percentage of that money. But just remember, it is a good thing to be legitimate and really start this out right. And if you're watching this video and you're still feeling like a little bit lost, I would encourage you to go check out my first video that I will have linked with some different business ideas. And once you kind of have that idea, write yourself up a bit of a business plan. What do you plan on doing? Where do you plan on doing it at? What are your strengths that you can see playing into this? And what are your weaknesses that would play into this? For me, I know that I cherish my weekends because I'm at work all week and I deal with a lot of people and my social battery runs down. So for me, the thought of going and sitting at a 1 or 2 day market just feels horrible to me. So I know, that's a weakness for me. So if I were to say, I'm going to do 12 markets a year, it's probably not going to be successful because I'm so weak in that area. I would have no desire to. I would probably back out. I might be in a bad mood, or it might come at a cost of just then when it's Monday and I'm back at work and I have nothing left to give, no energy, no spark left. For me, looking at that, if I wanted to be a finished piece seller, I would know by looking at my weakness that I should probably look into doing online sales because I wouldn't have to have that face-to-face contact. You know, it would be more work setting everything up online, but I can learn how to do that. I can watch YouTube tutorials on how to set up an Etsy store. That's not difficult because I can do that in my pajamas, on my couch, in the comfort of my home, and that might be worth it to me. Now, I'm not saying that it's easy to start a business, and I'm not saying it isn't hard work, but I think a lot of times we overcomplicate things and just make it more difficult than we need to. So really, I want to encourage you, if you sat through my first video and you sat through this video, I think that's probably a good sign that you are being called to turn your crochet hobby and your love of crochet into a business. So I think that you should explore it some more and see how it would work with your lifestyle and with the legal aspects in your state, and then really go for it. Don't sit around analyzing and, thinking about it, or thinking that you have to have literally everything planned out in advance. You really just need to have a few of those basics covered. And again, that's where a qualified professional will come in very handy. And if you don't have access to one in person, definitely look for something online that can help you, and that is also legal in the state you live in. I have a lot of confidence in you. I believe in you. And if this is something that is really burning in your heart, I think you should just take a leap of faith and start working towards it. You don't have to start out by telling everyone you know. Obviously, if you have a spouse or partner, you probably want to run it all by them. If it is a true partnership, that is definitely something where you want to have their support and their blessing so that it just makes everything easier for you. But aside from that, you don't have to tell everybody on Facebook. You don't have to tell all your family, especially if, your mother's brother's sister's cousin has always been snotty to you. There's no reason for all of these people to know, because probably most of the people in your life that you have direct contact with, they're probably not your ideal customer anyway. They're probably not going to be the ones buying from you. So you don't have to go all in and having a big announcement for everyone you know when they're not the people you're going to be selling to anyway. And that's my final point, is that I don't ever suggest thinking that your business is going to be started by friends and family, because it's just not the reality of how it works. Your friends and family love you and care about you, and they may make some purchases to help support you in the beginning, but unless they are a crochet lover, they're not going to have that return customer drive because it's not something they're really into. They might feel like they're doing a favor for us. We don't want people just purchasing for us out of pity or anything like that. Now, obviously, if you're going and you're getting, and if the people in your life already know you crochet and all of that stuff, I'm not saying hide it from them by any means. And obviously, if they ask you to purchase something you make, obviously sell it to them. But just realize that a real business starts from scratch and doesn't have all these customers lined up in the beginning. And I think that that's easy to forget because we want to jump in and we want to feel successful and we want it to feel easy. But the reality is businesses have to have a good product, a good service, and they have to market themselves. So that is the reality of it. So if you do make a good product and you can offer great customer service to the people you're selling it to, you need to market it to the people that want to buy it. I hope this video provides you with hope. I want it to be encouraging. I know that sometimes I can be a little bit curt or short. I think the reason for that is just because I have seen people get swept up in different business ideas, whether it's like a MLM type of business, or even if it's not, just a small business. It's easy to get caught up in some of that, like cheering, the rah-rah, the everything's going to be easy, follow these steps, it's going to be great. And that's just not the reality. There are obstacles. It does cost money, but if it's something you love and you have a passion for and you know you're good at it and you can make money, then by all means, it can be worth it if you put time and effort into it. Even though I can't answer every question based on legal issues and where you live, if you do have more questions, put them down in the comments, because if it's something I need to expand on or do another video on, I would love to do that. It is important to me that you fulfill your dreams and your destiny and you succeed. Nothing would make me happier. And if you have no desire to start a business, that is perfectly okay too. It is amazing that you have a crochet gift and you just enjoy making and giving or making and wearing. That is amazing, and I appreciate you watching this video. Thank you so much. I will have a video up here for you to watch. And in the meantime, thank you so much for talking yarn with me. Bye.